Hi, I'm Michelle and I work for Constance. Some of you seen me on Tuesdays at Live, Tuesdays at 2, sorry. I wanted to get on and just let you know that earlier today we had some technical difficulties. I kind of went through the Tuesdays at 2 show, but not all the information got out there. I'm sure nobody noticed, but I did. So I am going to go through the show now and get some of that information out for you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to get started. So welcome. I am glad you're all here. I'm glad that you guys can join me as we take this trip down America's Highway. This is actually one of the very fun Tuesdays at 2 that I've done. So I remember cars from when I was younger. There's just something sweet about candy apple red. It is one of my all-time favorite colors in a muscle car. We'll go through a lot of things today, different cars, different engines, different colors. I hope you have a drink, you can relax and sit back and have a little fun. From a very young age, I remember being around cars. You see that picture? That's me, the tall one. My father was a car enthusiast from an early age himself. By the time I was 6, my father had left his 9-to-5 job, business job, and had started to sell cars. At any given time, we would have a number of cars parked at our house. A lot of them were classic cars, some of them muscle cars, but often they were red. The terms classic, vintage, and muscle, when referring to cars, often gets confused. A classic car is considered to be any car that is over 20 years old. A car is considered antique if it is over 45 years old, and vintage if it was manufactured between 1919 and 1930. However, in California, a car is called historical if it was built after 1922 and if it is at least 22 years old. So that's not confusing at all. Muscle cars, however, are in a class all their own. They're as American as apple pie, hot dogs, and baseball. The first American muscle car arrived in 1949, and it arrived as the demand for cars, faster cars, grew stronger. Oldsmobile introduced the Rocket 88 with a high compression overhead valve V8 engine and a lightweight Oldsmobile body. The need for fast cars started in the 1920s with prohibition and the desire to outrun police cars. With NASCAR in its infancy, the muscle car took off in the 50s, and the Rocket had competition from Chrysler Corporation's Hemi and Chevrolet's small block V8. Chrysler introduced the Hemi in the 1955 Chrysler C300. It is known as one of America's most powerful cars with 300 horsepower. However, the momentum for fast muscle cars would slow down. In 1957, the Automobile Manufacturers Association put a ban on factory-sponsored racing due to the catastrophic racing accident of the 1955 24 Hours of Le Mans race, which killed driver Pierre Levin and 83 other individuals, mostly spectators. Pierre's car brushed another car, flew into the stands, burst into flames, exploded, and threw metal through the crowd. It is still considered the worst crash in race history today. At that time, the president of GM thought that self-imposed bans would keep the government from imposing racing regulations. Competition from car makers not in the Automobile Manufacturers Association became too great, and the ban was actually lifted in 1963, and they saw a surge in muscle cars again. Drag racing saw its highest popularity in the early 60s. Dodge had the 1962 Dart with a 13-second quarter-mile run, and believe it or not, that still wasn't fast enough. Speed mattered. In 1963, Pontiac Super Duty had what was called a Swiss cheese frame. It quite literally meant that it had holes drilled in the chassis rails, making it much lighter, as you can see in the picture. With the release of one of my personal favorites, Pontiac brought in the golden age of muscle cars with the 1964 Tempest GTO. GTO was an abbreviation for Gran Turismo Omologato, which merely meant that the car was approved for racing. The GTO had appeal and muscle. The price tag was $3,200 and it was considered affordable to younger people at that time. Pontiac actually sold 6 times as many as predicted. In the same year, Ford produced the Thunderbolt, which at 427 cubic inch displacement, which would today be considered a 6.99 liter engine, was considered far too dangerous and only 127 were made. Speed was definitely the consideration for muscle cars. If it wasn't fast, you might as well park it somewhere and lose those keys. The top 5 fastest muscle cars from the 1960s and the 1970s, as recorded in 2018, are the 1964 Pontiac GTO pictured, the 1967 Cobra 427 Super Snake. This was designed by Carroll Shelby. It had Paxton superchargers and amazing horsepower. You had the 1969 Ford Mustang 428 Cobra Jet. This had a high level of performance. It had larger valves, a hood scoop, and ram air induction. The 1973 De Tomaso Pantera. It was designed by Argentinian race driver Alejandro De Tomaso, and Elvis was said to have driven this type of car. The 1968 Dodge Charger RT is still very popular today with its 440 cubic inch 4-barrel Magnum V8 engine and 375 horsepower. Muscle car is an American term for high performance coupes. Typically, they were rear wheel drive fitted with high displacement V8 engines. Whew, that was hard to say. While muscle car enthusiasts debate engines, the top 5 have an undeniable place in history. In 5th place is the Pontiac 389. In 1964, John DeLorean, who some of you have heard of, was Pontiac's chief engineer. He introduced the concept of an optional engine package where customers could purchase the GTO that utilized the 389 engine and thereby bypass GM's internal engine limits of the small block 330. In 4th place is the Corvette L88. In 1966, GM unveiled the 427. It's an engine that took them 2 years to design. The L88 was a race engine, no doubt, with 560 horsepower output. This big block bad boy gave Corvette victories in 1969 and 1970 in European race series, the FIA GT Championships. The 3rd place is the Buick Stage 1. The 455 engine was used in the Grand Sport and had 390 horsepower and 510 pounds of torque. 2nd place belongs to the 426 Hemi. It was a powerhouse originally meant just for racing. In 1964, when the Daytona 500 saw first through 4 places go to cars that had the 426 engine, stricter rules were put in place, which led to a street version. The 1st place engine is the Ford 27 Camry. This engine was Ford's answer to the Hemi. The Camry saw a short life as it was banned from racing. Ford dropped production in early 1967 due to difficulty and expense of production. There has been quite a bit of debate between Buick and Mopar enthusiasts on which is faster, the Buick Stage 1 or the Hemi. The last time a behind-the-wheel race was actually ran, Hemi won, but it has gone back and forth. There is no doubt that muscle cars are sought-after gems today. One only needs to watch a Make 'em Live auto auction to see some of the most gorgeous muscle and sports cars around. The 5 most sought-after cars today are the Shelby GT 500 KR, the Chevrolet Chevelle SS LS, the Plymouth Barracuda, one of my favorites, the Pontiac GTO, another favorite, and the Oldsmobile 442. If you're so lucky that you might catch one of these beauties going across the auction line, for a split second, you could actually dream of putting your hand in the air, but often these cars carry a huge price tag for the everyday person. A 1966 Pontiac GTO in perfect condition can range anywhere from $45,000 to $143,000 at auction. It is definitely not for the faint of heart or the light of wallet. Two of the biggest names in classic muscle and sports car auctions are Mecum and Barrett-Jackson. Both companies have multiple auctions throughout the year in different locations in the United States. You can watch them live on television, or if you happen to be in Hershey, you could watch the Hershey Show in summer with Mecum. The Hershey venue is the closest that either auction company gets to Lancaster County. If you ever get the opportunity to go, do it. The energy is amazing and you cannot help but get engulfed in the excitement. You'll probably find yourself saying things like, "I remember," a lot. Take your camera, you will want to get pictures. The other venue car enthusiasts enjoy is the American Car Show. They can be found in every state. Some are small pop-up car shows, some are car clubs, and some are well-known, such as the Carlisle Car Show. The Carlisle Show draws over 100,000 people. If you can't make that one, perhaps you could make the Hershey Fall Car Show, which draws over 200,000 people, and it's sponsored by the Antique Auto Club Association. Hershey also hosts the Elegance of Hershey. This is a weekend event that's sanctioned by the Vintage Sports Car Club of America. It's a 3-day event. You'll step back in time to hill climbs and garden parties that feature some of the world's best vintage cars. If you happen to get the chance to check out Ocean City, Maryland's Cruise in Ocean City that's held in May, this car show is nonstop action and you feel like you've stepped back in time to the days of drive-ins and street racing. The Dodge Coronet RT convertible is possibly the rarest American muscle car in existence. The Coronet RT convertible is fitted with a 426 Road and Track engine. It's said that there were only one made in 1967 and two in 1970. The one pictured is absolutely gorgeous and reminds me of a brand new shiny penny. Muscle cars and sports cars have always been beautiful. I don't know for me if it's the sleek lines, the details, the wheels and tires, or the colors, but I do know the colors are fantastic. We're going to take a look at them, and the first one is Orbit Orange. Orbit Orange could be seen on the panels of both the 1970 Pontiac GTO and the Judge. Grabber Blue was one of the most iconic Ford Mustang colors ever made. It certainly did grab attention. It was originally only offered as an exclusive option to the 1969 Shelby Mustang. Sassy Grassy Green, or Go Green, same color, two names. Chrysler colors were known as high impact colors. On the Plymouth, they called it Sassy Grassy Green. On the Dodge, they called it Go Green. Carousel Red, or Hugger Orange, same color, two different names. The Carousel Red appeared on the 1969 Pontiac Firebird and GTO as Carousel Red. As Hugger Orange, it appeared on Chevys, Camaro, and Chevelle. Rally Green was introduced in 1968 by Chevy on the 1968 Camaro. Saturn Yellow was offered in 1970 on the Buick GSX. Dodge introduced Panther Pink. It's quite a color. It was based on the popular Pink Panther animated character that was shown at the end of the movie. Plymouth named their version of the same color Moulin Rouge. And we come back to Grabber. This is Grabber Green. The Grabber line of colors included blue, orange, yellow, and green. In this picture, it's shown on a 1969 Mercury Cougar Eliminator. And last but not least, one of my favorites is Plum Crazy or In Violet. Again, same color, two different names. Plum Crazy was one of the most showy colors that Chrysler offered. They used it as on the GTXs with Plymouth, also with the Challengers, Dusters, and Roadrunners. With Dodge, they called it In Violet and used it on Chargers, Cudas, Demons, and Super Bs. My personal dream would be to one day own a lime green Plymouth Barracuda or a plum Pontiac GTO. I mean, a girl can have dreams, right? The 1970s actually signaled the end of the muscle car era. With new regulations in place for fuel, engines had to be less powerful, had to have less compression, and then the oil crisis hit in 1976 and basically put the final nails in that coffin. Thankfully, there are enough of these cars around in different venues like the car show and the different auctions that we can still see these cars, and a lot of times we can see them in person. We just have to go to where they're at. Did you have a favorite one today? Subscribe to our channel, drop us a line, send us a comment, let us know what your favorite muscle car was. And all of us here, the entire Constance team, wishes you a safe and happy 4th of July. Thanks for joining me again. It's always nice to have you here. Join me again next Thursday at 2 p.m. And as always, if you have any ideas for future shows, contact me at michelle@constance.one. That's michelle@constance.one. Have a great evening, and I'll see you next week. Thanks.